I honestly think this was the hardest I've ever had to try to pick my top 10 books of a year ever. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to be doing my top 10 books of 2024, and this year was a doozy, which is great because that means I read so many fantastic books that it was really difficult to pick. So I had a lot of trouble. I really did have a lot of trouble trying to figure out what my top books were going to be, but we did get there. I have a list, and we're going to talk about it here. Now, I will note, I was going to still do my normal top 10 of quarter four before I did this, but I realized that I had a really particularly strong quarter four, and so there was going to be too much overlap between that list and this list, so I decided, you know what, we're just going to do the top 10. So I will give a shout out to Xiang by C.F. Iggulden and Lord of Emperors by Guy Gavriel Kay, who would have been on that list but did not make this one. But yeah, so just a couple of things, and we'll mention some other things that would have made it on there as well as we get going. But with no further ado, let's get started with my top 10 books of 2024. So coming in at number 10, we have Electric Forest by Tanith Lee. Now, I'm using this instead of the actual book cover because I want to show off this original Don Mates artwork, which is fantastic, and it's hard to find a good sized picture of the actual cover. This, though, I did in October. It was my Out of Your Comfort Zone October, and it was a pick made by Joanna, and I absolutely loved this. This was so unique. The writing was absolutely beautiful. It was kind of like a classic sci-fi with some really unique elements to it, and I really loved this. I don't have a physical copy yet because I really would like to track down the original artwork version and not the new one, which is much more boring to me. So I'm hoping to find that. But this was by far the highlight of my out of comfort zone experiment there that I did, even though I had a good time with all of the books. I really love this. It was just so unique. I have a video talking about this and everything that we're going to talk about. There's a video of you can check out as well. But just it's one that I can't tell you too much about because it's better if you don't know. But really beautiful writing, really unique and interesting sci-fi, and a really great book. And I think that's the only one I don't have a physical copy of. The rest, though, I didn't pull out because this time I was going to be smart. And instead of pulling out the books and having you be able to check behind me and figure out what's on the list, this time you can't because I didn't do that. So I'll have to do slightly more cuts when I'm editing. But that way the surprise won't be spoiled. But let's move on then to number 9. So number 9 was The Lotus Empire by Tasha Suri, the third and final book in the Burning Kingdoms trilogy. And this was a really big surprise for me because I enjoyed the first two books in this trilogy. I really thought the first one did a lot, set up some really interesting world building and magic. The second one I also thought was good, although it felt like it was stretched a little bit. And so I still think this could have been a duology, but man, was book 3 so just great. It really delivered on all kinds of things for me. It set up new stuff. It did all kinds of interesting stuff. And while it still has its flaws, I was so invested the whole time that I really didn't care about any of that. And I love all of the different things that it did, the unique way it addressed a lot of the questions, added so much to this world, to the lore, and it had an incredibly satisfying ending, in my opinion, as well. So this was another really good one. You'll see some other late books or final books, which it always makes it really hard with that kind of thing as well. But just a really fantastic book and a trilogy that I already really enjoyed, but this just upped it for me. I think capped it off extremely well. So hats off to Tasha Suri for doing a fantastic job with that trilogy. I'll be really curious to go back and read her other work and also just see what she's going to be doing next as well. Then coming in at number 8, we have A Song for Our Bone by Guy Gavriel Kay. And I feel like too, the fact that, number 8, which is a really phenomenal book. This list was so competitive, and I had so much trouble putting all these things in order. But really, this was a beautiful book. And I started Guy Gavriel Kay this year. Absolutely immediately became one of my favorite authors. I've enjoyed everything that I've read from him this year as well. But A Song for Our Bone was really beautiful. It is a standalone. He has a lot of standalones, and this one is centered around the troubadours of France. So music is a really important part of this, and it's just this deeply, character compelling political type of historical fantasy type of thing. He likes to do his historical analogs, and this was just a really wonderful book, which you can check out the reviews for this, like I said, and everything else if you do want to know more. But really beautiful book. I had a phenomenal time with, and this was, I think, the second K that I read, and I started really strong with K. And then we have number 7, which I feel like this very easily could make an argument to go up higher than this, and I think later books in the series very likely will, but I decided to put it here for now. The Darkness That Comes Before by R. Scott Baker. This is the first book in the Prince of Nothing trilogy, in the overall series, The Second Apocalypse, and this was a really, really compelling book, and one that I enjoyed thoroughly, despite it's one of those books that always feels weird to say enjoyed, because it's very unique and it's very interesting, and so this pulled me in quite a lot. I'm very, very excited to continue with this series, and I think this is going to very likely become a favorite series and just continue to blow me away. But thought this was a very strong start to the series, and I am very excited to continue. It is dark. It's not quite like the content I was necessarily expecting, but it is very, very dark, and just kind of this world that's being set up here with it as well. But the themes and everything that it's exploring, the characters that we're exploring, there's so much, and the writing is just really impeccable as well. So I was just very, very drawn into this right away immediately, and had a really wonderful time with it. And so I will be very much, this is a series I'll be focusing on in 2025, and hopefully getting through the whole thing, because I just really want to read more now that I have finally started. And then we have, coming in at number 6, we have The One Tree by Stephen R. Donaldson. And this one was hard because I almost put White Gold Wielder here, which is book 3. This is actually book 2 in the Second Chronicles of Thomas Covenant. Book 3 was also excellent, but The One Tree, I think partially because of the way that it intersects with some things from the first trilogy, the way it ends, everything that happens was just really fantastic. Also, while I really enjoyed the first book, The Wounded Land, it was this book that really brought me what I was looking for, and so White Gold Wielder was fantastic. It was a great ending, did a lot, but I think for me, The One Tree edged it out just ever so slightly. I'll definitely be talking more about this series as well, just because I already really, really was a fan of the first Chronicles, but the Second Chronicles just elevated it even more, and so this book 2 I think was my favorite, just ever so slightly edging out the last book, but just really, really great, and I still think something way more people should read, which is a theme that'll continue with number 5, that way more people should read, because it's still pretty much unknown, although I've been definitely shouting about it. The biggest surprise of the year for me, The Haunt on the Island of Esmir by Justin A.W. Blair, which might be a little controversial how high this is on this list considering everything else with it, but this was it was such a surprise, but it was a book that I was so invested in and just enjoyed so thoroughly, so quickly, and I really, really loved not only the story, like just my subjective thoughts, how much I enjoyed it, but I think this author did so many great things. Also, the fact it being, a debut book and everything, it's just, there's so much here that was done so well that I really felt like it did deserve the place in the list here. It's really, really well crafted. It's kind of a mix with some of the Black Company, some like the Bridgeburners from Alasan, with all kinds of unique elements. The way the author plays the POVs to show you different sides of things, and just once we actually kind of find out really what the haunts are, so compelling and just crazy good. So I really, really enjoyed this. I could not stop talking about it and raving about it in my review that I did of it. I definitely recommend that you check it out. It is well worth the time to check out here. All right, so that gets us to, we're now in the top 4, which, man, this was still, there's so many fantastic books to go. Coming in at number 4 is The Navigators Children by Tad Williams. This was also a hard one to kind of pick which book in Ostenard was going to come up here, because I did all of Last King of Ostenard and this year, and I did it all really within this last quarter too, and all of the books really would have been on top 10s. When I was making my list for quarter 4, I realized that I would have had, because Witchwood was quarter 3 technically, but I would have had Into the Narrow Dark and Brothers of the Wind and The Navigators Children, because I read them all. I ended up binging the whole thing, and I just so thoroughly enjoyed the series. I decided to go with The Navigators Children because it is the last book, and it just really did so many great things. And it's a book, too, that you get to the climax, and there's still like a couple 100 pages left, and it never at any point was like any less invested. I was so enjoying it. So while it was so hard to pick a favorite because The Witchwood Crown also was just such a strong starting book. Empire of Grass was the only one that was a little bit down for me, but Into the Narrow Dark brought it right back up, and The Navigators Children was such a fantastic end. And so it's crazy to me that this is only here at number 4, considering how much I enjoyed that book. But yeah, we got some other really great stuff still coming. But I absolutely recommend Last King of Ostenard if you've not read that yet. Granted, you do need to read Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn first, which I also, of course, highly recommend as well. But really, really phenomenal series. Really stuck the landing, and I absolutely loved just going into another really giant series in this world with these characters. I had a fantastic time. All right, getting into number 3, we have Shadow of the Smoking Mountain by Howard Andrew Jones. This is another one. This is the end of the first arc of Hanuvar. It might be the last book, I'm not sure, but a very satisfying end. And just really brought back everything that I loved about the first book. This has been a series that just quickly I fell in love with so fast. Lord of the Shattered Land was one of my favorite books of last year when I read it. And the second book was really strong, but then the third book really, really brought it up even further. And it was still brought back that episodic nature, had a lot of different unique things we were following with both the kind of the Monster of the Week type of stories, some other unique stories where we're seeing some different POVs, and then also just the overall big Hanuvar story, a very satisfying ending, and so many great scenes. This also, I think it was the very first chapter, has my favorite scene from the entire series because it's just fantastic. So I absolutely love the Hanuvar Chronicles. Amazing series. I know you've heard me talk about it, and hopefully you've heard some others talk about it as well, because I've been trying to spread the word, but definitely recommend checking it out. It is fantastic. All right, we're in the top 2. Now, the top 2, which again, this was really difficult because coming in at number 2 is The Lions of Alasan by Guy Gavriel Kay. This was the first Guy Gavriel Kay novel that I read this year, and in general, the first one I read, and this immediately was in contention for my top single book, like standalone book of all time. This is literally a 3-way tie with To Ride Hell's Chasm by Janie Wirtz and The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. Like, those are my 3. So should tell you, like, that is very high praise. I loved this. I don't know that I've ever just like started a new author so strongly and immediately with just this, because I don't know that I'm ever going to find a Guy Gavriel Kay book that I love as much as this one, although I've really been enjoying reading the rest and trying, but just absolutely amazing. I was immersed and pulled in immediately. I love the world. I love the characters. I just love the plot and all of the things that were wrapped around. Again, Guy Gavriel Kay, fantastic with themes, with building out these intricate stories. Just phenomenal book. And it's one that I knew immediately when I read it was going to be on this list, and probably really high on this list. This, I think, could have easily been my top book of the year if it weren't for one particular other book that came out this year, which is in our number 1 spot, which is Song of the Mysteries by Janie Wirtz. This is the final book in the Wars of Light and Shadow, which is just a phenomenal series. And I couldn't, look at that cover, by the way, too, just so good looking, but I could not pick anything but this, because not only is this book on its own absolutely phenomenal, but it is the final book in a 10 or 11, depending on how you count it, book series that I got so invested in last year. I absolutely loved it. It's just a series that I don't know that I've ever really just been pulled in quite the same way. I've mentioned with all of these books that I was really pulled in and immersed. This is just such an expansive world. I ended up binging it. I got to have some really great live conversations where we went in depth on each book. Hopefully we'll still be doing one for this book as well, because I really want to do some in-depth talk about it. But Song of the Mysteries for me delivered on everything I could have wanted. It had so many surprises. It just, despite being a gigantic book, like, the pace is insane. There's so much happening, so much coming to fruition. I absolutely loved it. And it was, when I read that, I knew it was going to be basically impossible to top that this year. And then considering all of the other books that really were in the running, I do think this might be one of my greatest reading years. With just some of the top things. This might be one of my greatest reading years ever, because the competition was incredibly stiff despite how much I loved this one. And so I just, Phenomenal book. You've all heard me talk about The Wars of Light and Shadow. I cannot recommend it enough. It's not going to work for everybody, but it is a phenomenal series, and I have a why you should read you can check out if you want to learn more about it as well. And you're probably going to be hearing more about it as I do some more, year-end content type of stuff as well. But just absolutely phenomenal. I loved it. I loved it so much, and it very much deserves its spot here at number 1. So there you have it. Those are my top 10 books of 2024. Let me know your thoughts on any of these, as well as what your favorite book or what some of your top books were in the comments. This was just such a competitive year for me with some amazing things, which I love that I'm reading so many great things and finding new things and getting to the end of some series as well. It's just been fantastic. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. I always love to hear from you. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the links in the description, as always, for the Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizardly Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether any of these books, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.